Hi, good morning. Today we're going to be talking about cancer and the environment, specifically chemicals and fine particles in the air and the soil. We are group two, and my name is Caitlin Rodriguez,
My name is Bryce Famia.
My name is Beverly Lewis.
And my name is Rocio Bermudez.
and now we're going to go ahead and talk about our presentation. I hope you enjoy it.
So this is the overview of what we'll be discussing today in our PowerPoint. The chemicals and fine particles that will be discussed will be wood dust, silica, carbon monoxide, asbestos, sulfur dioxide, radon, carbon dioxide, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, particulate matter, and TCDD.
In terms of the graphic on the right, at the top of the graphic, we have three administrators of outdoor air pollution, being particulate matters, chemicals, and microorganisms. While for indoor air pollution at the bottom, we have cooking fumes, tobacco smoke, and decorating materials. Both of these pollutants combine to produce oxidative stress, inflammation, DNA damage, DNA methylation, RNA modifications, and issues with metabolism.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with wood dust. So what is it? As you can see in the picture, wood dust is a material that is commonly generated during woodworking processes such as sawing and sanding. This can be we can be exposed to this even by DIY projects at home, and all these things just by working with wood, we're already being exposed to these fine particles. However, they are mostly found in woodworking workshops, sawmills, and construction sites. For example, places where they're making doors for the construction or things like that. These fine particles are often suspended in the air and they can be inhaled, or they can even come into contact with the skin, um, further damaging our cells and, as said previously, our metabolism. Down there is the link towards the picture it's at, and let's go to the next slide. So, more about wood dust and how does it affect us. Okay, so wood dust has been classified as a type 1 carcinogenic by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC. As seen on the picture right here, it can cause sinus cancer, lung cancer, and all sources of cancer in the respiratory pathways. Long-term exposure to hardwood dust, such as oak and beech, has been linked to an increased risk of nasal and sinus cancer, while prolonged exposure to softwood dust, such as pine and cedar, has been associated with an elevated risk of lung cancer. So, although they're both wood, different kinds of particles can lead to different kinds of cancer. Inhaling these particles can also lead to chronic irritation and inflammation of the nasal passages and the sinus, as previously stated, creating an environment that may promote the development of cancerous cells in these areas. Some components of wood dust that make it so dangerous are formaldehyde, which has been identified as a potential carcinogen. This substance has the ability to damage the DNA and disrupt the cellular processes. By doing this, the cells are more prone to having mutations, which can create damaged cells, such as the cancer ones. Now we got another material, another of the ones that we previously said, such as silicon dioxide, also known as silica. And it's linked to ceramic manufacturing. So silica, when it's own in the little packages, it is usually not that dangerous of a material. However, it is commonly found on the manufacture of ceramics, and since it's present in all the glazes in some kind of form, and it can be very dangerous if inhaled. according to the article Silicosis and Lung Cancer Current Perspective, free radicals are produced by epithelial cells that take up silica particles and macrophages that phagocyte silica particles. Impaired particles clearance increases the persistence of silica in the lungs, which also contributes to the development of lung cancer. Now, the epithelial cell injury and the accumulation of these free radicals can contribute to oxidative stress and to the development of cancer cells. Now for carbon monoxide. So carbon monoxide is a highly toxic gas that can be produced by the incomplete combustion of carbon-containing substances, such as fossil fuels. This gas is usually produced by furnaces, kerosene heaters, vehicles warmed up in garages, portable generators, or by burning charcoal and wood. Now, carbon monoxide can be extremely dangerous, and it is often known as the silent killer. Since it is odorless, tasteless, and colorless, it makes it very difficult to recognize when carbon monoxide poisoning is happening. Carbon monoxide can be very dangerous, and you could even die from it. Some of the typical symptoms to look out for are slight headaches. For example, here in this table, you can see the percentage of carbon monoxide in your blood and the typical symptoms at that level. So from 10 to 20%, you can have a slight headache. From 21 to 30%, you can have a headache, slight increase in respiration and drowsiness. From 31 to 40%, you can have headache, impaired judgment, shortness of breath, thanks to the lack of oxygen in your bloodstream, increasing drowsiness, blurring of vision. From 41 to 50%, you have a pounding headache, confusion, marked shortness of breath, marked drowsiness, increasing blurred vision. And from over 51%, even more dangerous, it can cause unconsciousness and eventual death if the victim is not removed from the source. Now, carbon monoxide can also lead to an increase in the free radicals in the lungs. This is very dangerous as it can press an oxidative stress on the body, which eventually leads to cellular damage and cell dysfunction, which increases the risk of cancer.
The next air particle we will be talking about that's known to be linked to cancer is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are abbreviated to PAH. These are a class of organic compounds that are identified by their aromatic rings. As seen in the figure on the bottom, some known PAHs are naphthalene, chrysene, pyrene, coronene, and ovalene. These are formed through the burning of tobacco, coal, wood, gas, and oil. As seen on the graphic at the top, these are shown on the left-hand side. So tobacco smoking, fossil fuel industries, fossil fuel combustion, biomass combustion, forest and brush fires, and high temperature cooking. These lead to the emission of the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are then inhaled and enter through the human airway. These may also increase the amount of ROS, which is reactive oxygen species, in the body, and that leads to further oxidative stress. These have been linked directly to lung cancer through its production of metabolites. As they enter through the metabolic pathways in the body, they lead to DNA mutations, alterations in gene expression, and tumorigenesis. Particulate matter is a combination of several pollutants that form into particles of different sizes. As seen in the graphic, these can be either PM10, which is 10 micrometers. These are known as coarse particles. They can be PM2.5, which is 2.5 micrometers. These are known as fine particles. And PM0.1 micrometers are known as ultrafine particles. The lower the number associated with the particular matter, that means the smaller the particulates are, allowing them to have deeper integration into the respiratory system. For coarse particulate matter, these are filtered into proximal airways and they may irritate the skin and mucus. For the fine particulate matters, they may be able to reach the peripheral airway, but they cannot enter systemic circulation. And finally, for the ultra-fine particles, they have a higher absorbed toxic material on their surface, allowing them to enter systemic circulation. PM10 in particular is much less potent than PM2.5 and PM0.1, as PM10 has a high possibility of being cleared up in the nasal cavity through the help of cilia in the nose, while PM2.5 and PM0.1 are small enough that they can pass through the nasal cavity and make their way deeper into the respiratory system. This leads to lung cancer, nasal cancer, and sinus cancer. PM2.5 specifically stimulates inflammation and results in cellular damage through DNA methylation and altering genetic expression. TCDD, which is 2,3,7,8 tetrachlorodibenzo-paradioxin, this is another particle that has been linked to cancer. However, more research has been done linking TCDD to cancers in animals rather than it has to humans. TCDD is mostly seen at higher levels in occupational workers, but it can also be found in lower levels when consuming dairy and animal products. These are directly linked with altering cytotoxic mechanisms, which leads to carcinogenesis in humans. One commonly shown example known throughout history of the use of TCDD is through the evaluation of Agent Orange, which is a biological warfare weapon that was used during the Vietnam War. This contained TCDD. The dropping of Agent Orange is directly linked to breast cancer, liver cancer, lung cancer, and cancers of both the male and female reproductive systems when looking at the victims.
Okay, we'll be talking about asbestos. It's a naturally grouped of fibrous minerals that is resistant to corrosion and heat. Heavy exposure occurs in the construction industry, like textile, insulation, and other building materials. Asbestos fibers enter through the vernacular alveolar dust bifurcations, while some are deposited in the valvular sacs in the small airways. Asbestos can lead to lung, larynx, and ovary cancer, which is rare and occurs in the thin membranes of the chest and abdomen. Right here is a picture of an asbestos. Now, when it's small and you disturb it, it goes into the airway, and then which it could damage and have difficulty of breathing and smelling. Okay, here we have the mechanism. We have the asbestos, which also goes to the mesothelial cell, which leads to the cell death. Then we also have on the bottom the ROS and the RNS, which are free radicals, which also lead to the cell death. And then we also have the macrophage, which all are connected together. And then from the top, we have the cell death, which would go down to HMGB1, which would go down to the macrophage. And then from the bottom, we have the macrophage. It goes to the frustrated phagocytosis. And then that will also go, see how that all links, with the RLCS and the RNS, which will lead to the inflammatory microenvironment. And then when we go back up, we also have the macrophage go to the cytokinesis, which also goes to the inflammatory microenvironment. And then we go back up to the top for the cell death. We have the HMGB1, which also goes to the microenvironment. And with that all together, it would create the mesothelial cell, which is a loss of tumor suppressor genes, which are BAP1, CDKN2A, NF2, TP53, and SETD2. And that will lead to the survival and transformation. And then they have the mesothelioma. And then here we have sulfur dioxide, which you have probably heard in chemistry class. And then this is a major air pollutions are emitted into the environment by a large amount of combustion of biomass fuels and combustion of fossils. Lung cancer is one of the top leading cause of death and cancer. Smoking cigarette is the top cause of catching the disease. There's also a high number of those who have never smoked from secondhand smoke. There is a linear relationship between knowing carcinogens and agents in air pollution. And here it is cited.
Here we have radon. Honestly, when I first saw this word, I actually had no idea what it was. So it was very interesting to kind of get to know what this was. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas that lacks color, odor, and taste, just like carbon monoxide. It forms when uranium undergoes natural decay in rocks and soil. Radon can seep out of the ground and collect indoors, particularly in poorly ventilated areas. So radon kind of works kind of like not natural selection, but I'll say it when I remember it again. So it is found and it can enter through buildings, through cracks, and accumulate in indoor spaces, particularly in areas with, again, inadequate ventilation, such as basements and crawl spaces, but it can be anything up to houses or buildings. Additionally, certain rocks, building materials, and well water can contain radon. So many things can contain it. It's not only just stored in a certain place. It is essential to test indoors areas for radon levels, as prolonged exposure can lead to health risks, including an increased chance of developing lung cancer. If elevated levels are discovered, radon mitigation systems can be installed to ensure a safe indoor environment. And just like carbon monoxide, radon also, you can also install like a little system that can detect it, since like it's also odorless and it can be very hard to detect. So how does it affect us? Prolonged exposure to elevated levels of radon can naturally occur radioactive gas can impact lung cancer risk. Inhaling radon releases radioactive particles that damage lung airway cells, increasing the likelihood of developing lung cancer or even just damaging your lungs. The risk is influenced by factors like radon concentration, exposure during duration, overall health, and genetic susceptibility. Radon is a leading cause of lung cancer, especially among non-smokers, according for thousands of lung cancer deaths annually. To reduce this risk, it is crucial to test indoor spaces for radon levels and implement appropriate mitigation measures such as radon mitigation systems and proper ventilation. It's actually pretty crazy to think about how radon can affect us just as much as cigarettes, or just, to have the same risk as a smoker. It's actually pretty crazy to think. So it's pretty good to have a system for radon. And now carbon dioxide. I mean, I feel like most of us know what carbon dioxide is. It's a naturally existing gas in our atmosphere. It's composed of one carbon atom and two oxygen atoms. It's honestly found completely in different parts of the earth. I mean, it is in the earth's atmosphere, and it's found in very small amounts. It contains 0.04% in the atmosphere of carbon dioxide. How can it affect us? Well, although carbon dioxide itself does not directly cause lung cancer, it does affect the environment we are in, and our respiratory system can indirectly contribute to the disease. Because if the environment around us is not good, obviously we are breathing in that. And higher levels of carbon dioxide, lead to increased air pollution when combined with other pollutants, resulting in smog and fine particles. Prolonged exposure to such pollution can exacerbate respiratory issues and worsen existing lung conditions, potentially raising the risk of lung cancer, especially in individuals already vulnerable due to the factors like smoking or genetic predisposition. So there are a lot of factories that let go of a lot of smoke that does contain CO2 and that does cause pollution. And it is very crazy to think about how that goes completely in our air. And actually, in China, a lot of people have to use masks, not just because of like everything that has happened recently, but like they've had to use them most of their lives because of so much CO2 and so much pollution in their air that it affects their lungs and many other things too. But also, CO2 is also a significant greenhouse gas contributing to climate change, which can affect air quality, weather patterns, and the distribution of allergens and pathogens, and indirectly impacting the risk of lung diseases, including lung cancer. Addressing carbon dioxide emissions and improving air quality are essential for safeguarding respiratory health and reducing the potential risks of associated with lung cancer.
When doing our research, we noticed two of the most important topics that came up numerous times in most, if not all, of the air pollutants and chemicals that are found in everyday air. These two topics were lung carcinogenesis as well as oxidative stress. In terms of lung carcinogenesis, this occurs when air pollutants cause lung carcinogenesis by directly entering the respiratory tract when breathing. This is a process that converts healthy lung cells into cancerous ones due to mutations in altered DNA, which can be encoded by environmental factors or carcinogens. You could also be born with mutations and acquire them throughout time. In terms of oxidative stress, these air pollutants that we've spoken about, they may also result in this stress due to their increase in the levels of reactive oxygen species, which are ROS. These levels become increased and are unbalanced, which causes processes like phosphorylation, transcription, and immunity to be thrown off. These are thrown off because the processes of phosphorylation, transcription, and immunity occur at low levels of ROS that are regularly in our body. When you have this overabundance of these air pollutants, that level of free radicals from the air pollutants increases the amount of oxygen that can react with specific species. This allows for diseases such as cancer to progress and develop due to the fact that our metabolical, cytotoxic, and numerous other biological functions within our body cannot progress or are damaged by this overabundance of reactive oxygen species. This not only damages DNA, RNA, proteins, and lipids, but also our overall health. As seen in the the graphic on the right, at the top, we see a car letting out its exhaust, a factory letting out pollutants through carbon dioxide as well as other particulate matters, cooking, which releases several air pollutants, and volcanic ash, which is released through the eruption of volcanoes. These have direct deposition and local effects as they enter through our blood and insert into our cells. When you breathe them in, they enter your respiratory system immediately, and they alter how your systems work. This results in oxidative damage and overall low-grade chronic inflammation. Due to this oxidative damage and inflammation in our immune system, there are a few molecular changes that occur. These include DNA adducts, gene mutations, TSG silencing, transcriptomic changes, changes in non-coding RNAs, and apoptosis inhibition. Due to all of these molecular changes, there is a time-dependent multi-step carcinogenic process. You start out with normal tissue. When you have high levels of ROS and air pollutants that enter your bloodstream, there is an initiated cell. That cell is infected and turns into a paraneoplastic lesion. When you have multiple paraneoplastic lesions and cancer cells growing, it turns into a malignant tumor. Malignant tumors are the ones that grow and can spread all across the body, causing cancer, which is much more hard to treat than a regular tumor.
Okay, in summary, our presentation touched upon numerous chemical and fine particles found within both the air and soil that are linked, or have enough evidence to be linked, to the promotion of carcinogenics. We indicated this carcinogenics through speaking upon specific interactions between these air pollutants and their various interactions within the human bodily systems. Through the analysis of oxidative stress, these pollutants result in oxidative stress due to the presence of free radicals entering the body and increasing the amount of reactive oxygen species, RCOS, within. This results in not only the promotion of carcinogenics, but also disrupts several systems within the body, such as the metabolic pathways, cytotoxic pathways, DNA and RNA alterations, and disrupting cyclofluorination. It is clear that the purpose of touching upon topics such as these provide insight into numerous possibilities of synergenics being prominent in everyday life, as well as providing information to those who may not realize the severity of enforcing environmental policies to limit the likelihood of interactions with carcinogenics in our everyday life, such as we can reduce it by taking the bus, which will decrease the CO levels. Anything else? And then on the next page, we have our Works Cited. This one. Okay. Anything else anybody would like to add?
Yes, I want to add that I hope this presentation also serves to create awareness and to know about the things that we should be aware of, such some things we could prevent, such as smoking, and for example, volcanic eruptions. We cannot. It's very hard to deal with those kind of things, but for random or carbon monoxide, we could do things such as detectors, and we can put them in our ceilings and things like that, and it will contribute to the treatment of these fine particles and chemicals to avoid getting diseases such as lung cancer and reproductive system cancers and all those things, such as Beverly, Bryce, and Rocio mentioned. So that is my part. I hope it served as a informative source to create more awareness and to also be ready to combat these kind of things. Also, for example, the DIY, to know how to deal with that. Make sure you're wearing a mask. Make sure you're taking the right measures when dealing with wood dust and chemicals such as those. So that is my addition to the presentation.
Got it.
Thank you, guys.
Also, in terms of environmental policies that could be implemented, there should be work done with the Environmental Protection Agency, who is the EPA. They regulate the emissions of almost all of the air pollutants that we talked about today. Now, these are known or potential and have high evidence to be linked carcinogens. Through the analysis of how we could limit the amount of pollution that we are causing, the amount of cancer due to that will decrease. For example, as Beverly said, carbon dioxide. Through taking the bus, that would limit the amount of carbon dioxide as well as other pollutants that are produced through our car, because it's a sense of carpooling. If everyone on that bus drove their own separate cars, much more carbon dioxide would be emitted. And that would just make much less world. In terms of factories, they should have a regulated amount of carbon dioxide that they could emit, and they should also look at more green opportunities to do that. Electric cars are becoming more and more prominent. These reduce the amount of emissions through cars as they work with electricity rather than gas. Gas is due to combustion of materials such as coal, oil, wood, and other. The combustion of fossil fuels produces an abundance of carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide enters our atmosphere and the air that we breathe. That results in a natural warming of the earth, leading to not only habitat degradation, but also a more polluted air environment that we're breathing. When we breathe these air pollutants and particles that are not good for us to be breathing, it leads to numerous changes in our body due to the abundance of reactive oxygen species. These cause DNA damage, mutations, alterations in our genome, and several other things to occur, allowing for tumorigenesis and carcinogenesis to occur, leading to an increased likelihood for the risk of cancer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add a little something too. I 100% agree with Bryce and Caitlin, and especially with Bryce when it comes to factories. I mean, we have found ways to find non-GMO fruits and to find just healthier options. So I 100% feel like we could find like a better option for our factories and not to have all this pollution in the air. And it really does affect us, and we should be very much more aware and more cautious like you said with the wood and just with everything around us to really take care of our bodies and just of the next generation, because you know we're taking care of ourselves but also of Earth.
That's true. Because also it's honestly better for us too if we just grow our own food. Not only it helps the world, but it helps ourselves at the end of the day. Okay. Okay, so that's great. All right. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.